watch.
So many movies out there, you don't know which ones are good, which ones were bad.
You curious about what's out there?
I'm Joey Powers.
I'm Don Tretler.
This is the best pictures.
The ones you don't want to miss.
Hit it.
Say hello to my little friend.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Winners go home and prom queen.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
I don't deserve this. Deserves got nothing to do with it. No sequel for you.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Best Pictures. I'm one of your hosts, Joey Powers.
Hi, and I'm Don Tretler. Welcome to the show. And we have a special guest with us.
As always, your best hostess to the host, Alex Stradling. All right. That didn't make sense, did it?
So this is the episode that you've been waiting for. You wanted to hear us talk about Brokeback Mountain. And I called it the Brokeback Mountain Challenge because almost every guy that I know hasn't seen this movie, or they avoid it like the plague once they know what it's about, which is, what were we going to say, like two cowboys that fall in love with each other?
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, but actually, I mean, they're sheep herders, but
yeah, they meet,
they're cowboy
and
guys.
they work together on Brokeback Mountain, and they just kind of have like a romance. And then every year after that, they get together and go fishing every summer, so to speak, I guess. And I guess one time, Heath Ledger forgot his fishing bowl or his tackle, and like his box wasn't even open. His wife noticed it and stuff like that. So it was like this whole hidden love story. And obviously, Dennis Quaid, the guy who plays the boss, kind of caught on to it after the first summer, their only summer, I guess, working together.
Yeah, that magical summer.
We got a 7.7 on IMDb.
And what do you think? 7.7.
I didn't think.
What would you give it? What would you give it, Adam? It's
I mean,
over 6. Is it watchable?
I wouldn't watch it again. I'm not.
Because it was a horrible movie.
Well, I mean, it's definitely not 7.7. I mean, I would say I'd say it's above a 6, but I mean, certainly not like. I mean, it was the favorite going into the Oscars to win Best Picture that year, and ultimately Crash ended up winning, and a lot of people thought it was because Hollywood wasn't ready yet to give a movie like that the Best Picture.
Right.
Because Crash kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody really expected it.
I don't know, and a lot of people don't think that highly of Crash, but I gotta say,
I like
really
Crash.
liked it.
I like Crash definitely a lot better than Brokeback Mountain.
Now, what did you not like about Brokeback Mountain?
Obviously, the tent scene was probably not my favorite scene at all. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I guess I didn't really have high expectations going into it because the theme isn't really a movie I normally. And it's not because if it was men, if it was women, I would feel the same way. I'm just not 100% comfortable watching a movie like that where it's just solely based on that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if the elements was just, like there are a lot of different elements and stuff, and that just happened to be one of the subplots in the movie. But given the fact that the whole movie was based on two cowboys and their romance over the years, just something that doesn't appeal to me. You know, I mean, I'm not a romantic movie person anyway.
Right.
You know, so I'm not just going to go and watch a movie because it's romance.
Well, you know, I didn't like it the first time I saw it either, and I couldn't put my finger on it and say why, which is kind of one of the reasons I wanted to watch it again and say, was it like the romance that bothered me about the whole thing? Or, I don't know. Like, I kind of felt like it felt really dreary to me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of like watching Titanic. Like, I watched it just because it was one of those movies where ultimately, one way or another, you're going to see it because it's going to be on TV or something, or a girl you're dating is going to want to watch it or whatever.
Right.
And I watch it, I'm just like, this is a 3-hour love story. It's like, I don't ever want to watch this movie again. And it's not necessarily that it was bad. It's just not my type of movie.
Right.
You know, I'm more of a horror, action, suspense.
Well, here's a question I wanted to ask you. While you got the iPad, is what is Ang Lee directed? Because it seems to me Ang Lee has this kind of like, I don't know, kind of dreary, I don't know, way with all the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, he won Best Director for this.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Which
I didn't see.
He also won Best Director for Life of Pi.
He's a very sort of
But-
He
metaphorical,
has 2 Oscars, so I mean,
whimsical director in a lot of ways. A lot of metaphor. I mean, like you were talking about Brokeback Mountain, and the trailer itself was pretty. It was a little hokey. It was kind of hard. I think it's tough. I think there's. I mean, it's a decent love story. It's a tragic love story about.
yeah, I'm
two,
sure it is.
two
It's
lovers,
just, like I said, I'm not a
two
love story
homosexual
person.
men who
You know?
live in rural America, the quintessential John Wayne America, who have homosexual desires, or not even desires, but they can't really be who they really are, and that's the tragedy of the story. Now, I think that the writer, it was specifically, they wrote cowboys because they wanted to show that the struggle of homosexual men who have to live up to a certain image, and they chose that sort of metaphorical John Wayne,
Right, the
classic
big old tough guys.
tough guy
Exactly,
American
yeah,
image. And Ang Lee did a pretty good job of making it not turn into a farce, but there were just moments that you just can't get past. And I don't know if he took it from the book, but they just turned out to be really, really hokey. And it's hard. You have to. There's this line which he didn't fall off of, like, you're doing a movie about 2 homosexual cowboys who are acting as macho as they can be, and like the line of that turning into a farce or like a comedy is. Like, it could easily just go off the rails. And he kept it on the rails, but it's really hard to keep it on the rails. And it went off the rails a couple of times. Like, he didn't have to show... It's like if this movie was for, like, a general audience, they didn't have to do the tent, sex scene, okay? Which, like, literally, I mean, it's grunting in a tent. That's where it, like, goes off the rails, where it's funny. I mean, like, literally, it's funny. And then there's the scenes where they're, like, going fishing... Or they're going out to the mountains. They specifically go out into the mountains so that they can hang out and be alone and be themselves. Okay, but there's a scene where they're in the shop and the shop owner's like, you boys spend a lot of time up in the mountains. I mean, it's lines like those where it goes off the rails. Now, he kept it on the rails 90% of the time, and that's where the movie just kind of like fell up. It falls apart. I mean, it's like because you understand why they're taking 2 cowboys acting extremely macho, but I mean, it's part of who they are, but there's also an aspect that they have to keep hidden. They're trying to show that what does it mean to be a man, that juxtaposition, and so it's taking 2 stereotypes like of a man, like the cowboy, like that's what a man's supposed to be, and then blending it onto the other end. And so I think that's where it kind of falls apart. Because there's probably a couple of movies that we could probably come up with which the average audience could watch about a love story about 2 gay men or whatever.
Well, like that one that Colin likes, that Call Me by Your Name, which I haven't seen yet. I'll watch it one of these days.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's. I don't know. I'm trying to.
Well, what do you think?
if there's
Like,
anything.
what about the?
It was trying to
tent
make a
scene?
point.
The tent scene is pretty
Did they
like
have to show
infamous.
it? Did they have to show it? If they want it, like, for a general audience, like if it's like you're telling a love story, a tragic love story about 2 individuals that had to live. So the story itself was they had to live in lies, and that's part of the tragedy of those characters. Is it destroyed who they were of the lies they had lived. They had to get married. They had to live these fake lives, which is true. I believe that's happened. And that's what the story was about. But did it have to be 2 cowboys to prove that point? Did you have to take 2? Because when you take 2 extremes, or what people think, they're trying to break down. I mean, it could easily. I mean, come on, think about it. I mean, like, strippers dress up as cowboys. Male strippers. I mean, it's like taking 2 extremes and like putting them together. So it would have been a better story, I feel, if they weren't trying to like shove down that point. If it was just 2 men, they weren't cowboys in Wyoming. That they were, they had to live the same kind of lives. I think maybe people would relate to it more because it's so hard to like keep that thing on the rails without it turning funny.
It's one of the.
I mean, literally, it is.
Is one of the Village People a cowboy?
Yeah.
I mean,
Are they?
that would be my take. Yeah, like your Village People, you take these stereotypes. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just.
Well, do you think this was about love, or do you think it was about sex? Because
I think it was about love, definitely. Like at the end when Heath Ledger goes to Jake Gyllenhaal's parents' house, and then he takes the coat and he starts crying and he's hugging it and holding on to it. It's pretty quirky.
I mean, it was sad but funny at the same time, and that's the problem with the film. The film is because of the two extremes. Is you have these. I see why they did it, but at the same time, it diminishes what you're really trying to prove. So you have two men living up to this stereotypical macho man persona that's been just a American mythological creation, the cowboy, and then.
Well, all right.
That breaking
So
down.
do you think the whole? How about this? Let me throw this
So
out.
that's the
How about
problem.
the whole mask of masculinity? Isn't that like a masquerade? The whole thing.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
So we have to put on this thing. Like, okay, Joey and I, we have to be disgusted with the tent scene in order to guard our masculinity.
No, that's not. But the problem is just like you didn't have. So if you want to tell a story to a general audience that might have like have to guard their masculinity, but even you can tell a romance story between a man and a woman without having a sex scene. You know what I mean? Or a tragic love story where they couldn't necessarily be who they were. I mean, it's not a love story. I mean, it is a love story, but it's a tragedy at the end. It's like a Romeo and Juliet. So they could have not done those, like the grunting in the tent. I mean, again, that's why I say when you they could have told the
Can we get off the grunting?
No, what I'm saying is they could have told the same story, but not taken the two extremes. Because anytime you take two extremes and try to use that juxtaposition, you're right. You're satire, you're comedy, you're at a farce. Okay, and that's the problem. This movie didn't want to be a farce. It didn't want to be a comedy. It wanted to be a serious drama about the mask of masculinity and two homosexual men that had to sort of play this role. They could have done that in a more toned down way and probably gotten that story through, but again, that's where it failed, and that's why I think a lot of people.
Let me ask you this question. Here's something interesting, right? They picked two straight actors to play this love affair, as opposed to taking two gay actors to do it. So for years and years, people like Rock Hudson, right? Rock Hudson was a gay man who was pretending he was a heterosexual. But here they took two heterosexual actors and had them play, well, I don't want to say the gay, because they even said it in the movie. They said, I ain't queer. And the guy goes, me either.
They're both married with children. I mean, so.
Right?
I mean.
But that's the thing. Aiden, it was played. He was trying to keep it on the rails. Like literally, it's really hard to. That's what I'm saying. You get comedy and satire when you take two extremes, two things that you.
Because if you did it
doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that what we think of a cowboy, what's been ingrained in our head, what masquerades as a cowboy, and you put those two together.
Boring calling you.
And you put those two together. You do that to create a comedy or to say something, and that's where the film it could have communicated itself better if it didn't try to take those two extremes.
And if you did, you could almost make this same movie and make it funny.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh yeah,
and that's what
I'm surprised they didn't make a satire.
Well, they did. There were still like many trailer remixes of like
They didn't make it on the movie though. They would just have like incorporate it into like a spoof of like many movies.
Yeah, like
They
Top Gun and any sort of action male. Because it lends itself, because these action films, you have the buddy cop film or there's.
Right, but I mean, like Top Gun specifically had a spoof.
Yeah.
Hot Shots was it pretty much a direct. The first Hot Shots was more or less a direct.
Well, no, they were because the trailer for Brokeback Mountain was, literally they took all those famous one-liners and put it in the trailer. And so you have two cowboys. Now in the movie it plays a little bit different, but in the trailer it plays like a comedy. Like Heath Ledger's like, I just can't quit you. And it's just like this bombastic music about two gay cowboys. And it was, come on.
Well, Joey, what'd you think? You saw it for the first time. What'd you think about that tent scene?
I already told you it was my
It's
least
horrible.
favorite scene in the movie.
This is my thing about it, okay? This is the thing I always want to ask people about this. Didn't it seem like very abrupt to you? I mean, didn't it feel like what?
Just
what the heck?
kind of out of nowhere. Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
yeah,
Now, I
all of a
watched it for the second time for the show. And I watched it, so
Yeah,
I knew,
for the show.
I knew it was coming.
You know,
But
I didn't-
still, there was something about that. There was something about it where I
it was
was
almost like rape.
yeah.
Yeah, like one guy was
Just
raping
kinda-
another guy.
kinda.
It's like,
Kind
I'm
of.
going to show you, you know.
Like if this was about love, I think what it was supposed to be, it was supposed to be like this awkwardness. But I mean, oh man, I don't want to
you
be,
gotta
I don't
remember
want
the
to be
scene.
gross, but it was
one
like,
character was a little bit more comfortable, and the other character wasn't.
It's kind of
And the other-
standoffish.
And that's you know, he was going to force him. You know, that's basically what it. I mean, like,
We're ruining it for Colin. He's never going to be able to watch it.
Well, here's something interesting about it, right? Just to go off of that, right? Is that we're talking about them being gay cowboys, but if it was really about love, what if it was about they fell in love with each other, especially Heath Ledger's character, who it sounded like he was planning on getting married before he went up on the mountain, right? So he came back and his plan was he was going to go back and get married, which is what he did.
Yeah.
Now, he only strayed out of that marriage, as far as we know, right? With
With Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
That's it. That was like as if it was the love of his life, who was like just a little bit above his wife. Now he probably still loved his wife, Michelle Williams, in the movie.
And I think sometimes
He never said he didn't. He never
Right.
felt like he didn't,
Right.
except when she tried to rake him over the coals about the whole affair. When she did that, that's when he kind of lost his crap with her. But other than that, I think he loved her. I think he would have stayed with her. And the other relationship he had in the movie was a heterosexual relationship too. So really, the only homosexual relationship he has is with Jake Gyllenhaal, as if that was like something that his love. Now Jake Gyllenhaal, on the other hand, he may have been gay from the get-go. Do you know what I'm saying? He may have, like I say, been more comfortable with his sexuality. Even at the time, he knew who he was. And even with Heath Ledger, and then he got married, and then he was having affairs. Like he approached that other, the guy
at
at the
bar.
rodeo, the other guy in the rodeo.
Yeah.
And then there was the other guy who there was a little bit hint about.
I think they left it a little ambiguous until the end, until he sniffed his coat. But I think that was the whole point of the movie. But
it's creepy.
it's hard to relate to those characters because because it can go off because they're too cowboy, not just because it go off the rails, but also I think people have issue, and I know that was the main point of the story is the lies and deceit. So he continued the marriage with their, and I mean obviously they were blaming on society, forcing these people to live these lies. I think that was maybe kind of the point of the how many people got hurt, his relationship with his wife. He's had kids, because the societal burden of not being who you feel like you truly are. And that was the point of the film. Again, they could have made that better. They could have made the characters a little bit more sympathetic, in terms of that, and also just get rid of the cowboy. And I know it was based off a short story, and it might read better as a short story, but I think that was the issue with it. I mean, literally that was the issue. I mean, it's hard not. Come on.
Now, do you think the women? I noticed it kind of felt like the women in the movie knew, and more than one. Like Jake Gyllenhaal's wife, she kind of knew, and then, of course, like. Heath Ledger's wife, she knew. She eventually learned about it. She didn't suspect it, but she knew.
Yeah,
I kind of got the feeling that Heath Ledger's daughter knew.
I did too, yeah.
The mother?
Yeah, they all did. And then we keep talking about it. I don't think it was a bad film, and I think Joey is not wrong for saying he didn't really like the film because it was hard to relate to the characters. But there were a lot of moral issues that that was coming out in this drama, and I keep harkening back. I just think that, taking those two, it could have been done in another way where then you could focus on those aspects of the stories, the things that we're talking about. But, you add the cowboy stuff and that, the way macho stuff, just for the, the extreme of it, it's hard to, it's hard to connect with the film. I think that's ultimately what happened. They gave Ang Lee Best Director because it was directed nicely, but
Oh yeah,
It
no,
was because literally any other. I mean, like that's like you take that project. I mean, like I said, it's really easy to go off the rails, and he was able to keep it on the rails. 90% of the time. I mean, there's just there's just some things that. I mean, it's tough. So I think that's why stuff wasn't bad.
Well, it got a 7.7, and Crash got 7.8. So I mean, Crash did get a better ranking. or a better rating rather.
Yeah.
Who directed Crash? Because that wasn't
Crash
his best
was.
film.
I
think that was one of his worst
Was it
films.
Paul Haggis? No, there wasn't.
It was
like
Paul Haggis who wrote it.
Wasn't
yeah.
a big name director.
But he had.
No, Haggis
he had
directed
written
it
some
and
other
wrote
things.
it.
Yeah, he had written.
Yeah, I
some
think
other
he
things
wrote.
that
Didn't he
was-
write Traffic?
Traffic, yeah.
I think he did.
I thought Traffic was better. Crash was.
I would say, yeah,
That was
I like
decent.
Traffic probably better than Crash. You've seen Traffic, right?
Yeah.
It was running the thread of, how everyone is sort of separated in LA because of their vehicles.
It might have
We're
actually
all
been Stephen Gaghan that wrote
sort of
Traffic.
the underlying sort of racism and disconnect in Los Angeles, which is true, but. What was the next topic that we were going on?
No, this was it.
Oh, that was it?
Well, I was just going to say, there are things, because I felt like you did about it. I mean, it wasn't just, I can get past the homosexuality or whatever to enjoy a movie.
Yeah.
But there was something about it where I wasn't enjoying it. And I'm wondering if some of it I wrote down, like, the way time moved. Like, I didn't really get that sense, like, that they were kind of going on a yearly basis. It kind of felt like fits and starts, and maybe
Yeah.
that's the way it was. Maybe that's really the way that relationship was, that it wasn't kind of, hey, we get to every November, we're going to go up on the mountain. Which would have been okay. I mean, really, outside of the tent scene, they didn't even, well, they did have that, when they finally got reunited, they had that big kiss,
Yeah.
But other than that, they just looked like two guys who were going fishing on the mountain every year, which, you could see people doing that.
Yeah.
Especially say you lived across the country from somebody. Hey, come on, let's going on our annual hunting trip. I mean, now we're going to be suspicious of anybody who goes on a hunting trip.
Exactly. Is that what you're really doing?
What are you guys doing up there? But I don't know. And something that just felt bleak. That movie just kind of felt kind of bleak. But maybe that's
Well, yeah, it's tonally, it's not a very happy film.
No,
not, really.
not at all. I mean,
Minus the subject matter. I mean, it's kind of, like half the film is them and they're droning on in their everyday lives of being macho cowboys. You know what I mean? And that sort of stare off in the distance, like, oh, I wish I was on top of the mountain, But it's yeah. So it's definitely not. I mean, they probably would have had a better message, more people watch if it was kind of like a comedy. If they made it go off the rails a little bit, but the characters joked about it with each other, because you know what I mean, like, oh yeah, we're a couple cowboys, or
we're going fishing.
yeah, you know what I mean.
yeah. $1 Million Baby was the other one that he wrote. Paul Haggis, by the way, that I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah.
Stephen Gaghan did write Traffic.
Yeah.
But we're pretty much out of time, so I did want to mention real quick that I did start my Avengers marathon. I've gone through the first 5. And definitely my favorite of the first 5 is Iron Man. So I watched Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and then the first Captain America. So I'm watching them in order. So hopefully by the next time we do a show, I'll have watched them all. Because I don't think we're going to be able to do a show next week because it's Memorial Day. And I don't think Colin's going to be here. So,
All right.
so it'll probably be two weeks from today.
Colin's going fishing.
But
Totally not like that.
anyway, one of your hosts, Joey Powers.
They just gave me the stink eye. I'm Don Tretler.
I'm Alex.
And these are the ones you don't want to
wanna
miss.
Except for the...
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Here's Johnny. Go ahead. Make my day.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.